Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast with me, Scott Casson-Rennie, and Manscaped.
Al Coates, and I'm not Manscaped. You'll have to listen to the podcast extras for that. I've put something at the very end, very end. And I'm not Manscaped. I will never be Manscaped.
No, you're a big northerner.
Yeah, don't Google manscaping. Don't Google image manscaping ever. Anyway, this is like a really inappropriate way to start a podcast about something that's very, very serious.
It is, yes. But we haven't spoken for a couple of weeks because we've been on a bit of a break.
That's right.
You've been on holiday.
I've
moved house and all that stuff. Well, you are still on holiday, actually, which is quite surprising. You're on a 2-week holiday. I didn't think you did holidays very well. Well, you don't do holidays very well.
No, I do them very badly, but I am on a 2-week holiday, mainly to support the welfare of my children, primarily the youngest child, because we said birthday and it's the other one's birthday, the 15. Actually,
the other one.
I'm trying to remember which ones.
And the granddaughter.
Yeah, so there was 3. We've had 3 birthdays. We've got one birthday tomorrow as well. So and we're.
Wow, that's a lot in a week, isn't it?
Yes, it is a lot in a week. And then we do the same again at the end of September. We have 3 birthdays in a week and a wedding anniversary. So. Yeah,
busy.
That's what I do with my annual leave. We kind of make. Actually, today I made drop scones, which I have to say was the first time ever I've made drop scones. And drop scones.
Drop what? Oh no! The first time you said with a bit of a tinge of a scone rather than a scone. So you made up for it in the second attempt here. Thank you.
Scone. Scone.
Yeah.
It's a scone.
No, it's not a scone.
Yeah,
it's a scone.
And if you could, we've got an emergency disaster fund for legal issues, and you can send your arguments over scone or spoon to our lawyers.
Let's not get onto the bread roll or bap or cob thing. Oh, jeepers creepers, that's come up many times.
Yeah. If you've got any problems with anything we've said, if you could send it to Chris at firstforadoption.co.uk. That's not right.
Oh, you might need to
no, it'd be fine. It'd be fine. Anyway, we're here today. We've got a slightly sorry for that. We're prelude banter prattle. We have got a very special guest, someone you're a very good friend with, and have been worked with extensively through all kinds of things.
All times.
And someone.
And she's come on board with No Borders as well. She's going to be doing a bit of training for us at some point.
Check out the website, see what we're up to. At noborderstraining.org.
Exactly, yeah.
That was slick, wasn't it? Damn.
Oh, have you been practicing?
As I started that sentence, I thought in my head, you don't know how to end this sentence, do you? It's like literally this little voice said, you don't know what the end of this sentence will be. So I feel I think I styled that out. As the young people would say.
You did well. Congratulations. I'm going to put that on for your annual review.
Excellent.
So well done.
3 out of 10. Strong 3.
Yeah. So our interview is with Jo Garofolo, or Garofalo. I can never get the pronunciation right, and she will correct us, so that's fine.
Yes.
And we're talking FASD because it's FASD Awareness Month.
Yes, but it was an hours-long interview, and we also talked about her experience of adoption, how she kind of got into this world, and actually that was really interesting. I could have talked to her a lot longer about her experience of adoption because I think that was really interesting. And then she talked about Voice in a Million, and then she talked about FASD. So, shall we put it on and then maybe reflect at the end?
Yeah, we can have a little bit of a... Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Yeah. His interview.
Yeah.
So today we are joined by a good friend of mine. Well, I like to think she's a good friend of mine. Whether we actually are or not is another matter, but we'll see.
That's what everyone says.
I'm delighted to welcome, after a couple of years of waiting, Jo Garofolo.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
At long last, we have you here.
I know.
For a double-sided conversation, really, because one of the reasons we wanted to get you on was obviously with it coming up to FASD Awareness Week, Month, Day. I think it's a day that's turned into a week that's turned into a month.
It's now FASD month, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So there's we're going to have a chat about that in a minute. But first of all, Jo, for anybody that doesn't know you, who are you? What do you do? Where did you come? No, not where did you come from, because that would then give away your location.
I'll say where I come from, not where I live.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a better idea. Yeah. So give us a bit of an intro as to who Jo Garofolo is.
So Jo Garofolo is, well, I guess primarily adoptive mum of 2 children, a son, almost 16, inter-country adoption from an orphanage in Tangier, Morocco, and a daughter, age 11, domestic adoption. And she is our beautiful little girl who is on the spectrum with FASD, ASD, ADD, the alphabet behind her name. And I am also the co-founder and creative director of Voice in a Million, which is a company that was set up 12 years ago, post the adoption of our son, to raise awareness for adoption and fostering. The plan initially was just to do one concert to raise money for the British Association of Adoption and Fostering at that time, which obviously is no longer. But here we are 12 years later, and that concept has grown, and it turned into like a thing that a mum and dad who'd adopted a child wanted to do a full-blown business, really, and one that I think only continues due to the passion of being adoptive parents. And the journey we've been on. And I find it quite bizarre because I remember back to being assessed to adopt our son, and I remember distinctly telling a social worker that I didn't want to be a crusading warrior parent, and now I just think, oh my goodness, that's really what I've turned into. But I think when you land in that situation and your family is formed through adoption, your perception of what adoption is changes quite dramatically once you're there.
Yeah.
So that's who I am.
Cool.
Can I ask you a question? Right, so every year Scott goes, I'm doing a Voice in a Million, or I can't do you see you on that night, or I can't do a recording on that night. And I go, all right, fair enough. He's never told me anything about it. Right, not one single thing.
That's what Google's for, to be fair, but whatever, yeah.
Right, well, yeah, but I hadn't realised. Do you know what? I'm just sitting here thinking I'm deeply embarrassed that I don't really know what it's about. I just thought it was like a nice thing for kids.
No, so my background is I went to stage school when I was 16 and ended up like in performance. So I did West End shows and toured and all sorts of stuff, summer seasons, etc. Long story short, met my husband when I was working for a sort of very big 80s comedian, a guy called Jim Davidson, who used to do like Big Break, Generation Game.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. So I was a singer on his show, and my husband at that time worked with Universal, producing and directing and making DVDs for the comedy market. And he always did people like Jim, Freddie Starr, those type of comics. And that's how we met. And so I sort of went from performing into production, so into documentary, music programming, etc., etc. But my passion was always sort of musical theatre and singing. And then when we adopted our son, we were 5 years in the adoption process in the UK with constant delays due to IVF. And at the time then, sort of 16 years ago, it was very much, if you've had IVF, it's 6 months before you can apply again to adopt. Yeah. So we went through that process over 3 years. And then we sort of finally finished that IVF journey, went to get through to our first sort of assessment preparation groups. And my dad had been ill for 10 years. But as we were accepted to start, my dad died, although we'd had like a terminal diagnosis for 18 months. So then again, we were delayed. So by this time we had been 7 years trying to adopt, and we just went away on holiday at Christmas time, subsequently ended up coming back, going to Morocco, finding this little boy in an orphanage. But of course we weren't approved in the UK. So we went to Tangier and we did the whole process in Tangier of a kafala, because Morocco and did not at that time, and still don't, they didn't have an agreement with the UK for adoption.
Yeah.
So we did the process in Morocco, but we weren't approved in the UK. And so we came home and sort of said, okay, we have our little baby boy. We've got him and we're going back to get him. And we were told, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
You're not approved.
Did you know that at the time? I mean, I'm totally sidetracking this conversation. I'm just kind of deeply intrigued by some of these things you're saying. So did you know, did you set out to adopt from a foreign country? And if so, why?
No, we didn't. We had been 7 years in the UK adoption system. Post my dad dying, it was a Christmas time. My brother and his wife had recently had a baby. They had another child. I had like 7 years of IVF, lost my dad. And I was very much like, I don't think I can stay here for Christmas because I can't be what I should be to my brother and his new baby. So we decided to go off on holiday. My husband's brother was working as a Christian missionary in Morocco. So we flew off to Jamaica and came back post sort of the new year to a message from my brother-in-law saying, I've been to this orphanage in Tangier. They have babies and they adopt to European couples. So you need to come out here. I didn't actually hear the message. My husband heard it, deleted it and spoke to his brother. And then consequently, we had a conversation with this lady at the orphanage and we flew out in the February, but we had not been approved in the UK because we've been trying to get approved. We'd been trying to even get to the preparation groups for 7 years. So we just went out there.
What do you mean? I'm not being funny, but that I can't make sense of that. Was it that because you were going through the IVF and infertility treatment, they said until you've done that, you can't get on a preparation course?
Well, no, in Surrey where I live, there were only 2 preparation groups a year. So after 2 lots of IVF, I said, let's stop. Let's get on to let's just go the adoption route. So that was the plan. When we went to apply, it was like, oh, there's no preparation group for 18 months.
You've missed it.
You've missed it. So then Robert said, well, we should just have 1/3 lot of IVFs. So we did.
Right.
Then
so it was just timing.
And it was like another year. And then we finally got into it. And then my dad died. Oh, right. and then on top of that, this is the worst thing. So my dad died. That was sort of awful. We waited. Then we went again. And then after 3 lots of IVF that didn't work, I fell pregnant naturally. And at 10 weeks had a scan where there was no heartbeat. And so, but I didn't miscarry. So then it was like, okay, come back in 2 weeks and we'll do another scan. And then I went back again and they said, oh, there is a heartbeat. Come back in a week. Went back again. There wasn't a heartbeat. Then I had a D&C. So all of that happened. And then I honestly told the local authority because I felt that you had to tell them all the truth. So I told them the truth of what had happened. So consequently, obviously, they felt that I needed to grieve. Yeah. So that was like another amount of time.
Yeah.
So it was just, I mean, at the time, I felt that they were making everything awful for me. In retrospect, I believe they did everything right and that's what you should do. But, you know, as a person who really wants to be a mum, it didn't feel like that to me. So we sort of went to Morocco and we were very angry. We were very angry with our local authorities. It felt like it was all because of us. So we went and did the process there. But consequently, when you come back and you say, right, I've done a kafala. So basically by doing a kafala meant we were legally, in the Moroccan authorities' eyes, our son's parents, which meant legally we were to finance his care, etc., etc. So we came back and got in touch with our local authority and we're told, well, no, that can't happen. You can't do that. So the answer from their perspective was that Sam, our son, should go back into the orphanage, and in 18 months, there was potential that they could assess us. And at that time, he was 4.5 months old. So subsequently, I moved to Tangier when Sam was 5.5 months old. And
of course.
we got a flat in Tangier, and my husband stayed here and fought. I flew back and forth. I did 17 flights from Sam being 5.5 months old to flying home with him to the UK 2 weeks before he was 1. I flew back to the UK to do the whole process, and my mum flew out to look after Sam, and that's how it happened. And then, so that long story short, that's why I wanted to do a concert to go.
Well, no, it can. You've painted a real picture, because you can, like all of us, we can tell our story in like a 30-second soundbite, but actually, that is a real journey to parenthood, isn't it?
Isn't it, Jo?
That's you must have felt like a punch bag by the time it was all done and dusted.
I did.
And this little boy's at home.
But when I came back, I just felt like our journey had been really, really, really difficult and very emotional. But obviously, I think it's like people talk about when they give birth, and it's like the worst pain in the world and it's the quickest forgotten. Yeah. This was probably the hardest journey in the world, but it was the quickest to just sort of sink in, because I had this boy and I was a mum and we were a family, and I was absolutely elated and couldn't have been happier. But when I came home, I just really felt that there needed to be changes to the timescales, and people needed to understand the journeys that some people go on to get to be a family, and for the amount of time that children wait to have a family. So that's sort of how VIAM sort of came about. The summer that Michael Jackson died, and he was due to go into the O2 Arena, and we were working, another long story short, we were working with an old classic rock artist called Rick Wakeman, who was with a group called Yes. And the O2 were trying to get acts in, because obviously they weren't getting people into the venue because there was no shows, but also the people within the arena were not getting any footfall for their businesses. So we were asked, can you bring Rick in? And I was talking to the guy that I knew, and he was just asking about Sam and the adoption. And I said to him, we're going to make an album of kids singing, and we're going to raise some money, and we're going to give it to the British Association of Adoption and Fostering. And it was him that said, you know what you should do? You should just bring in thousands of kids and sing here and do a massive concert. And this was like in the summer. And I mentioned it to my husband, and within an hour, he was like, right, I think we should call it Voice of the Million. He'd designed a logo. He'd rung the O2. And it was like, this was the summer, and we did our first concert at the O2 in the January with no knowledge. We had 5,200 children at the O2 singing to raise awareness for adoption and fostering. And it was just like really, it was like, oh my gosh. But it was supposed to be a one-off. It was never meant to be a sort of long-term thing. But what happened was it really resonated with teachers and education, because I think it was at that time, so Sam's nearly 16, so it's like 12 years ago. And it was at that time where in schools, PHSE and mental health and different family settings and different dynamics were sort of becoming more ingrained into curriculum. So it was really well received by the schools that brought children along. And it's just grown from there, really.
So the focus, the starting point is that there's that narrative and that kind of that seed. So how does that manifest in, the last time it was shown, last time it was the event was run in person. So where are you raising awareness still for the adoption process? Are you still raising, how does it manifest that passion?
So we, for the first 2 years, I think, or the first 3 years, I think we worked with the British Association of Adoption and Fostering, and we severed ties with them before they folded as an organisation, because they had an issue with the word orphan. So they didn't want that to be in any of the dialogue or script that was delivered on stage. And for me, that was a sort of no to move forward, because I have a son who was abandoned in a street in a market in Morocco and went to an orphanage. So my view was that very, very strongly that this, I couldn't turn that into something else and pretend it didn't happen, because I was living that, and I was going to bring a child up with that. So when that relationship sort of came to an end, we went to Adoption UK, and so we've worked with Adoption UK ever since. So they come to our event every year, but very much the way our concert runs is there is a narrative between songs that talks about family life, importance of loving families, adoption. It has, I would say, expanded considerably in the last sort of 8 or 9 years to talk an awful lot about special educational needs, additional needs for children, because that has become more and more prevalent. But Adoption UK come every year. They have a presence within the arena. They have somebody, well, Scott's been on stage, Jacob's been on stage, I'm sure you know.
No, he doesn't, clearly, because he doesn't listen, obviously.
But no, I know Jacob goes, and I know you go, but you never... something about Adoption UK is ringing vaguely. But more importantly, in my head, I was thinking, where does the podcast fit into this? We could be like on the decks, like we could be in the balcony, like Waldorf and Stan from the Muppets.
No, yeah, you could come and do a live broadcast, couldn't you?
Yeah. Oh, you could. Oh, you know what?
Right, there you are.
There's something. Right, anyway, we'll keep that quiet. Well, let's keep.
We have so many. It's so bizarre how over the years it's grown to the point where we have such a lot of schools who come with a huge cohort of looked after children. We have a lot of special educational needs come, who have a lot of children who are adopted with additional needs. We have a lot of relationships with teachers and schools of that sort of ilk, and I think that is just because it's actually remained a husband and wife thing. I mean, it is a business, but I wouldn't say it's a business that would give you a life. You know, we have additional businesses. It's a massive passion. I think that is the thing.
If people wanted to be involved and they weren't perhaps linked into a school that does it, can people off the street buy tickets and come and see us at the Voice in a Million?
Yeah, anybody can buy a ticket. It's school children across the UK, 5,000 children a night from schools across the UK. And then we have an auditioned group of children. So we have about 60 children who audition, who rehearse with me, and they're like the more talented vocalists that lead the songs. The schools all rehearse within school. So we provide all the materials, they rehearse in school, they turn up on the day. But anybody can buy a ticket, you know.
I think I might see if I can wrangle myself a free ticket then next time, I might
even give you one, Al. I might even give you a ticket.
Right, we're in. We're going to do a one. Even if you don't let us do it from the stage or anywhere famous, we'll just do it.
It'll be like smashy and nicey. Seriously, it will be.
Yeah.
You should come though. Look at the last time we did it live, we had a little girl. I don't know if it was the last time or the year before, from First News. Do you remember, Scott?
Yes, I do. Yeah,
they sent like a little presenter girl for their newspaper, and we let her come on, introduce a song, you know, and it was great for her. And then we got like some coverage in their newspaper that goes around all the schools. So
that's it. I'm so excited now. When is it? What's the date?
23rd of March, 2022.
Right, I'm going to put it in my diary now.
I'm glad you said that, because that means I can go now without even feeling guilty about going.
Yeah, don't feel
not that I would have done anyway, but and so I mean, I did VIAM with you for 4 years. Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah.
And just a change in those 4 years. I mean, you know, when we first started coming up, it was about the awareness of adoption, and then by the end, we were raising quite a cracking amount of money for Adoption UK, which was fantastic, and we even had a celebrity mother there. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I won't know who she is though, because he's not into Steps. But it was Claire from Steps. Claire from Steps was there, and she tweeted about it, and she actually responded to our tweets as well. We've got Jo and I were at home the next night after the second night. Jo and I were at home, as in each of our homes, and we were texting each other because we both had wine because we were that knackered.
And I think I'd probably only got up in the night ready to talk to you.
Wow.
And we were really excited that Claire from Steps had been talking about Viam and Jacob as well, because I think it was that, I can't remember what happened, but that was the first year that Jacob went on stage and did his little speech, and he did so much better than his dad, I can assure you.
He was amazing. He was so articulate, and it was clear you were massively proud of him, but I was standing there thinking, what a massive achievement for him.
Yeah. He's got showbiz in his blood, that boy.
Probably does.
He has.
So that's been going for that many years, and obviously the last 2 years, sadly, you've had to postpone.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, really, isn't it? But what can you do? I mean, that's just what's
happening. The thing is, I think we made the right decision. I mean, it has caused us issues along the way, not many, but it has. But that was simply due to timing. I mean, we couldn't have had worse timing, because our event in 2020 was due to take place 17th, 18th, 19th of March, 3 nights. Yeah. So 15,000 children over 3 nights with a sold out audience. And the country went lockdown 23rd. So we were pre-lockdown making our decision. But, we've got through that. And we're trying to focus on the positive going forward. And I think that's the
23rd of March.
Yes.
I will literally give you £5 if you let me say hello Wembley from the stage.
£5?
Do you know how many people say that?
£5?
It's so funny. All the kids that work with
English pounds.
Every year I have kids saying, please, can I say, hello Wembley, welcome to Wembley? And I'm like, no, I'm saying that. I'm saying that.
Can I just say, the last time I was there, it was my last year at Adoption UK, and someone had to donate £1,000 before they even got any recognition that they were in, and it was literally a wad of £20 notes, £1,000 cash.
Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
I was standing at the side of the stage, and somebody came running up. I was about to go on and introduce a song because I co-host, and one of my team came up and ran up and went, Jo, this guy has just come running down. He wants to give £1,000 to Adoption UK. And I was like, oh my God. And I was like, I've got 2 minutes before this song finishes and I've got to speak, and I'm running down the stairs. And he actually had all this money. I had to say it from the stage, didn't I? I said, Scott Casameni, come on down.
I have never moved so fast in my life, honestly. Well, I mean, I'd do it for £5, but £1,000 was just not going to be.
Yeah, but it was £1,000 in hard cash. You'd go to all the cash machines in the arena to draw out all the money to come up on stage and give it to Scott.
Yeah. You got Thailand that year, Scott.
So that went well into the coffers of Adoption UK. I promise you that.
But we do have quite good graphics and music, don't we? That we do have a good graphic presentation of what the whole thing's about, and there's a big section where I talk about it, and I just find it impossible to not get upset at Wembley, because I think that the sheer scale of people, when you talk about your own story, that's when you get emotion. I can talk about adoption and everything like this. It's easy for me to do it and tell the story and tell the facts, but when you stand on a stage with 12,000 people in front of you, knowing that the only reason you did it was because you adopted a little boy from an orphanage in Morocco, I every year still get emotional. And I think I've tried to get other people to do that section for me twice, to do the whole reason behind it so I don't have to go on stage. And it doesn't work, because I don't think it works because it's not from the heart.
Yeah. And just before we move on from Voice in a Million, what is clear when Jo starts leading in to the reason that VIM was established and stuff like that, the whole place just goes quiet. It just falls silent. And, you don't hear any silence any other time during the whole concert. But at that moment when Jo's talking, it just goes dead, like completely flat. Nobody says a word. And then whoever it is that's on the stage, I mean, you know, me and Jacob have done it for the 2 years pre-COVID. And literally when we were talking, you could hear a pin drop until you stop speaking. And that, you know, that's the kind of impact it has. So it's just an amazing thing. I love IAM. I absolutely do. And I will never give up cadging a free ticket off you. Anyway, so
good of you.
So on to the next project, or the new, the project that's been and is now about to launch, which is your new documentary.
Yes.
So FASD.
So our daughter, who you know, who's 11, came to us with with medical reports saying she had been exposed to alcohol in utero. By the time she was 3, I realised there were lots of differences. I wouldn't have said problems initially. I would have said, I don't think she's progressing the way my son progressed. And it just became progressively, there were more and more problems. And I very quickly thought about these medical reports and thought about the fact that one of the medical reports said adoptive parents should be vigilant to any future problems in regard to exposure to alcohol. But with my training, I'd had nobody had ever mentioned FASD to me, so I didn't have a clue about what it was. But I was going into school and they were going, oh, it's anxiety, it's attachment. And I was like, it isn't, because like she was very securely attached to us. She wasn't anxious in the way that the things that were presenting seemed to make sense to me. So I spent from her being 3 up until actually last April, so during lockdown, was when we finally got her diagnosis confirmed. So it had been suspected by me from the age of 3 and confirmed a month before she was 11. And she was diagnosed with FASD, ASD, ADD. ASD and ADD being comorbidities of the FASD, so secondary. For us, I had fought quite a lot along the journey. So pre the confirmed diagnosis, I had already secured specialist school provision. And she was already attending Beach Lodge in Maidenhead, which I believe you know, because I think you've interviewed Daniela.
I've had Daniela on, and I like to think she's a friend of mine as well, to be fair.
And a friend of mine. So Lissy has now been at Beach Lodge for 2 years. So she was already at that specialist school provision and she already had an EHCP. So finally getting the diagnosis last year during lockdown was a relief and a bit of a vindication that I wasn't some mad, crazy mother and that I sort of was right in my thinking. Heartbreaking in the fact that although I wanted the diagnosis for her because long-term transition to adulthood and her future, it's a necessity. But I think the hardest thing for me was being in lockdown and finding out and having the confirmation of the diagnosis in a 5-hour Zoom call with Dr. Raja Mukherjee. I think the hardest thing was when he said, your daughter will be classed as intellectually disabled. And I think for me, hearing those words on a Zoom call when I couldn't see anybody, I couldn't see my mum, I couldn't see my friends, even though I knew it was coming, it was such a difficult moment. And I went outside and just cried, but I don't really know why, because I knew it was coming, but I think it was like relief. But also when somebody tells you that, I think it loads on more worry, like what's going to happen when I'm here? What if something happens to me? What if something happens to my husband? And I think our fight, pretty much like adopting Sam, so like I said, I didn't want to be a warrior, but here I am. I think I was just like, how many people do what we've just done. Like, we've spent 8 years to get to this point. How many people give up? How many people don't actually know where to go? There are so many hurdles along the way. There is such a lack of education and knowledge within the areas of society where adoptive parents go. So as an adoptive parent, you're going to go to, your GP, you're going to go to the Senko at school, you're going to go to post-adoption support, you're going to do all these things. And I've done that, and nobody wanted to help me. I got offered parenting classes, and I got sent to CAMS to see an art therapist. And my daughter's got deficits in 8 of the 10 brain domains, and it's a lifelong neurological brain damage that is not curable, and she will need support. And it affects her body and her brain. She's about to transition to secondary school. If I hadn't have 4 and my daughter was due to go to secondary school in September, I dread to think what would have happened to her in terms of her mental health, which was already crashing at year 4. And so I think with VIAM being postponed and us going through this at the same time, I just was like, right, let's make a documentary, because that's something to do. And I don't know, I was just driven to do it, because I just felt like people needed to hear the stories. And my husband has made documentaries for 40 years, so it was very difficult to convince him to do it, because he has a very clear criteria about making a documentary. So his view is, a documentary is not to agree or disagree. A documentary is to put a subject forward, promote conversation, and let people decide. So what you can't do is, you can't go in as Jo Garofolo, going, well, I'm really annoyed, because that is not going to affect any change. And you can't go in saying you're right, because in England, although everything is moving very positively towards recognising FASD, we are still a long way from having clear pathways for adopted children, birth children, children full stop. So it's a tricky line. So it was very sorry.
So I was going to say, can I ask you, so is the documentary focused on your story, or is it looking broader at the issue?
No, the documentary is not focused on our story. The documentary is focused on 2 things, really. One, the lack of a clear pathway for children post-diagnosis. And 2, the inability to follow a clear pathway to get a diagnosis. Yeah. And probably the third, and probably the most important thing, is the lack of education for the youth of today in our schools. When we deliver sex education from, the latter years of primary school into secondary, and we tell children about the dangers of unprotected sex and drugs, and we tell them you shouldn't drink when you're pregnant. And I have a son who is nearly 16, going into his final GCSE year. So he's just done year 10 covering sex education again. And literally 3 months ago. And I had a whole conversation with him, and I said, so tell me how they put forward alcohol in pregnancy. And he said, they said you shouldn't drink when you're pregnant. And I said, okay, so did they expand on that? And he's like, no. And my big issue on this is that unless we educate the youth coming forward to why they shouldn't drink, we are going to continue to have children, and not children who are necessarily going to be adopted, because this can happen to a regular professional woman who goes out once a week and has 2 bottles of wine with a partner through the whole pregnancy. So it's not about, people seem to have this stigma that it is, okay, if you've got a child with FASD, you're sort of hanging there with a bottle and, you're on drugs, and that is really not the case. And I just feel really, really strongly that we need to tell them that the reason they shouldn't drink is because potentially, and not always, and not 100%, but there is no 100%, it doesn't happen. So the best thing is planned pregnancy, but they need to hear the stories of the impact of having children that potentially are never going to live an independent life.
There's a nuance as well, isn't there? Because there's children who that is the one spectrum, but there's also a lot of people, young children potentially, who have impacts that will just mean they'll never reach their potential. They may be able to function, but then they're not going to be what they could have been.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think FASD takes away potential with the effect that maybe doesn't impact their day-to-day life. So they may live independently and they may be able to function relatively well.
Yeah.
But they will never achieve what they could have been. To the case where, you know, the potential of somebody living independently is really in question.
Yeah.
And I think I've done an awful lot of education myself, and I've paid for mine, and I've gone outside of England, and I've done it online, and I've learned a huge amount, and it has changed my parenting dramatically with my daughter. Things that I had not even considered, even though I had been educated in attachment and trauma. It was so different looking at learning about the way her brain works, and the fact that consequences don't work, and the fact that her memory is like pretty much non-existent. And it's just, I just had to really, really learn things that I couldn't get access to the education I've had here. There was support here, and there are places in England and companies and organizations that are doing amazing things, but a lot of it still, I find, is very policy driven, which it has to be, because unless it comes from policy and the government, we won't get funding, and nothing will change, and there'll be no clear pathways, and so it absolutely has to be like that. But whilst it's like that, and we're getting all that in place, that in 5 years' time, people like me will probably be in a much better position. What happens to all of these people who have got nowhere to go? Because literally, when you get your diagnosis, it is very much, here's your diagnosis, but there's not a pathway now.
Yeah.
So here you go. This is it. You've fought for this. Conclusive evidence. Your daughter's got FASD, ASD, ADD, intellectually disabled. Her IQ is 68. She's probably only going to ever achieve interdependence. There you go. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do I do then?
That's it.
Well, I think that's really common, isn't it, amongst diagnoses, that people often see them as this kind of this castle on a hill, that if you can battle to a diagnosis, then doors will open, and specifically FASD, that's just not the case, is it? It is literally you put all your energies into hoping to get to these green pastures, the castle on a hill, and it's barren wasteland, isn't it? It's just there is nothing. I mean, I wanted the diagnosis purely and simply to be on a piece of paper. I mean, it sounds a bit morose, but I was thinking, if anything happens to me and my husband, because we're older parents, I need her to have that diagnosis. I need her to be in that social care system where she gets disability living allowance, and we've got a blue badge, and she's at a special school, and she's got transport. Because then I thought, if anything, God forbid something happened to us, she's in a system. I know she's still a child, but hopefully by having that, she's in some system. Hopefully, fingers crossed, will be around for many, many years. But that was my driving force, was on a piece. But I have spoken to so many people in the last 2 years that I don't know how really they've ended up talking to me. Somebody said, speak to her. And it's people all very much with very similar stories to me, but probably not used to fighting, or don't really know what to do or where to go. And I just keep going. That's just me. I don't really care. I'll just fight. So I'll fight for somebody else's child, and I'll fight for mine. And so I was like, we need to make a program. So the program is not
there's a little bit about our story, but it is very much, there's like 4 stories told throughout. There's a couple of social workers on there talking. There's Dr. Raja Mukherjee from the clinic, another doctor who works primarily with alcohol and drugs in the criminal justice service. Scott came along. So it's a whole host of different people from different areas affected by different things.
I think as well, I often find that adopters are in a unique position in that often we can, if you'd been a mother who'd drank during their pregnancy and discovered that your child had FASD, then there's a huge level of guilt that can like a millstone around your neck. But you as an adoptive parent, it's liberating the fact you can say, this wasn't my story. We can step over that millstone from the outset, and we can say that enables you to perhaps fight in a way that other people don't feel able to. Is that?
Yeah, I do think that's right. But I do, but I also think, we've got a birth mum and her son who's 19, who we've interviewed, and I thought that was probably the most powerful story for education for youth, because she is a lady who had a heart attack at 36. Massive heart attack. She already had 2 teenage children. She was brought back to life, survived her heart attack, was on lots of drugs, went through the change of life, got divorced, had these 2 teenagers, met a new partner in her early 40s. And meeting a new partner was going out and having a nice meal and a bottle of wine between the 2 of them and living that life. And felt quite unwell for 4 or 5 months, which they assumed was post the heart problems and the fact that she'd had all these drugs and she'd gone through the menopause. Subsequently turned out that she was pregnant. And this is a lady who would sit here and talk like me, very regular lady, 2 teenage children, fine.
Not that stereotype that we talked about. It's not
the person that you
unhelpful stereotype.
Yeah, not that. And so she was like that. She went and they said, the placenta's really thin because you've gone through the change. The baby's really small. It's not a viable pregnancy. So she went ahead with the pregnancy. She was like, I'm not doing anything. I've got 2 teenagers. I'm having this baby, and this baby now is a 19-year-old boy, well, a 19-year-old adult, and he was given all the usual ADHD, ASD, all of that. And she was like, no, he doesn't fit that. He doesn't fit that. He doesn't fit that. And consequently, because she was just a regular mum, and she did all the research and thought, oh my God, he just ticks every box. And it was really interesting talking to her, because she was a great person to a regular lady in her 50s with a 19-year-old son, who was not out drinking every night, was not an alcoholic, was not living a life that you would think, oh, well, that's why you're going to have a child like that. And I think that's like really crucial to get across to people. And it's not about telling anybody something's right or wrong. That's what I don't get when the media is all against us saying it. It's like, we're not trying to say it's right or wrong. It's like we say, don't eat pate, don't eat cheese. If you choose to do it, you choose to do it. But what I feel is people are not informed. So how do they know? We say don't drink, but we don't say if you do drink, you're going to have a child potentially that could be brain damaged for life, that may never live independently, that may never get married, that may never. We're not saying that's a guarantee, but if we don't give people the education, then they are not in a position to make an informed choice. And that's really what I think the documentary should be, or the aim is education.
Yeah. So where can people see this documentary?
Well, at the moment, it will go live on our streaming channel, VIMTV.com, on the 9th of September. Subsequently, or hopefully, we are looking for press interviews with clips. We don't want to sell it to a broadcaster. That's really not what we're aiming for. We really want to keep it under our streaming channel, but we would like to get news interviews and interviews with the people who've taken part and show clips of the footage. I think our biggest problem will be that post-COVID, having worked in media for most of my adult life, it is quite difficult to get media coverage for anything that is not positive at the moment, because post-COVID, everybody wants positive stories. So it's got to be, to get any news coverage, we've got to frame the news for the positive outcomes. So we can't spin it on, you know, every parent needs to know this, because, you know, we can't do the drama. And it is quite funny making one of those type of documentaries, because we've only released, like, I don't know, less than a minute promo, and it's got music underneath it. And two voices, one person with FASD and Raja Mukherjee, and it's out there on social media. But it's quite funny that people have come and gone, wow, I don't think you should have that music. And I'm like, but the problem is, as a parent of a child with FASD, that's one thing. As a producer of a program that is a documentary that is supposed to entice people to look at it, that's another. But I think people within the FASD world completely don't want you to go, oh, it's all sad. Which it isn't. No. It isn't all sad. Well, and I'm the first to say, you know, my daughter sung on the stage at Wembley. Your son stood on the stage at Wembley. There are successes, but at the end of the day, it's like anything. To get anybody to watch or engage, you have to go with the kind of, you have to bring it down, don't you? You've got to go sad music. This is, because then you want people to watch the whole thing. Yeah.
Also, it's not for them. Respectfully, it's for people who don't know. It's for people who need to be informed. So it's like Busman, you know, I'm sure, like all of us, will watch it. If we watched a documentary about adoption, we go, it's not like that. And
yeah. You go, like, how many times do you watch Long Lost Family and go, oh, for God's sake?
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't happen.
But it's not for us, is it?
Took my daughter to see her sisters. It wasn't like that, you know?
Yeah.
So I think I'm walking a tricky tightrope as a parent of a child who has it in support groups with a lot of people who've been amazing to me, and then working as a producer on a documentary about program, working in an arena that I know, knowing what is required, and my gut feeling is this is not aimed at adoption, fostering and FASD people. It's aimed at the public. Everybody in the world knows that, you know, drugs are dangerous and you should have safe sex. But why doesn't everybody in the world know that if you drink, the potential is your child is going to be brain damaged? So I think it's aimed at everybody, not at that little small section that we're all involved with, which I'm sure everybody will watch with interest. But that section are the people that are probably going to really... They're really going to criticise it, because I'm going for mainstream.
Yeah, there's an interesting model, though, isn't there? And when you look at you're familiar with the adverse childhood experience studies and that work, and there's the documentary Resilience, which has been used as a training tool, which has been shown to tens of thousands of people, but it's never quite made it. I think it might have made it onto the mainstream, but so it is a potential training tool as well, isn't it? It's for you know, rather than me showing slides going FASD is bad, we can be like, hey, watch this, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think you can. And I mean, I was talking to Scott. So we've done the documentary, and then I've developed this training program very much along the lines of the training that I did with a company in Canada. But their training, it costs quite a lot. But the beauty of it was that they gave you the training at the end to tailor to your own country. Right. And I thought that was like quite a good thing, because everything in England seems to be these slides with funny people. And I was like, it needs to be a person just talking in real life about, you know, what it actually is, and what, you know, tell like the real story, the stories that we have as parents of FASD kids, the real life things that people can relate to. When you say to your child, listen, go upstairs, get your shoes, get your bag. You know, by the time, they come down with one shoe. Well, I'm lucky if she gets to the top of the stairs and can remember what I've said at the bottom. But, you know, and to try and make it like real, not just these funny cartoon things, which seems to be a lot of the training that is currently available in the UK. And no disrespect, Al, because I love some social workers, and you seem like one I would really love. And I've got a really good friend as a social worker, but some social workers are quite flowery skirty. Don't put that in your podcast, though.
You'll have to edit that bit out then.
You know that, like, they're just a bit honest, like...
That's a legitimate description. You know, I've got a friend who describes them as, you know, coming with their chamomile tea bags. You know, asking, you know, literally bringing their own tea bags to, you go, oh.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, it's just like, I've got a really good friend who's a social worker who I met at the start of my adoption journey with my daughter, and then she left our local authority and went somewhere else, and we've stayed friends, and it all had to be a little bit like hush hush, because I don't think we should have really stayed friends. But honestly, if I had not had her, because I was given another social worker pre-matching with my daughter, but if I had not had my friend, who I've now been friends with for like 13 years, when I adopted my daughter, I don't know how I would have got through it, because my daughter came to us and she screamed for 15 months for 10 hours a day, and she never ever stopped. It was just constant. If she never done me in her mouth, she just screamed. And that was really the start of like this whole, oh my God, and it was horrendous. She shook her cot, she banged on the door. It was just horrendous. And I just had this like lady who I'd met, who I ended up being really good friends with, and she was like the most normal person I'd met as a social worker, but I just didn't have the greatest experience with some of the social workers I met.
Well,
yeah, I think it's mixed, isn't it? I
was going to say that everyone's had ropey social workers. It's kind of just part of the course.
Yeah, it's mixed. I mean, the adoption manager of the local authority that we went through the first time round said that we would never be able to adopt boys because we might be paedophiles, you know, as a same-sex couple. You know, that was 2016. Funnily enough, she wasn't there for very much longer after that, but she was a more mature lady, shall we say. So I think it was kind of new to her, and she didn't really know how to deal with it and stuff.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
I think I had like more mature people.
Yeah,
with when I was adopting Sam.
The social workers I really like are the ones that are 6 months off retirement, and they've cast off the shackles of political, of whatever, and they're just common sense bruisers.
Yeah, I know. By that point, they get to that point, don't they?
Yeah. The best thing for me was the head of the adoption service of the local authority where I am. She was there when I was adopting Sam, and it was horrendous. And we were called to this emergency meeting, and she sat there and said to me and my husband, "You believe you are entitled because you think you've got money, so you can do this." And we were like, that is so untrue. And the very first year that we did Voice in a Million, we sent her an invite to come to the concert. So that was back in 2010 at the O2 Arena, and she came and she sat through the concert, and we invited her to the hospital. And she actually sat and sobbed and said, for the first time ever, I realised the difference my job makes. And I think that was because we had people on stage that year. We had like Sunita talking about her adoption. We had Nikki Campbell talking about his. We had a lot of semi-celeb people. And it was very much that first year driven by the whole adoption story. Mm-hmm. And I sort of walked away having disliked her intensely, thinking, do you know what, if it's made a difference to her, then we're doing a good thing.
Yeah.
Because if people can come along and be touched by the stories of the families that reach a happy adoption, then ultimately they might be able to see that they do good and they don't need to be so difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Jo, it has been a pleasure as always, and we could probably talk all night. In fairness,
I'm sorry, Al. I know you need to go about 13
minutes.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I know that you and I can both talk because we have done regularly.
Yes.
To be fair, and we've sat there for hours to talk. So we'll keep an eye out for the documentary. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it'll get picked up by somebody in terms of screening it Like
I think we're very likely to get an international broadcast. I think the UK is going to always be a tricky one, but I think you just have to keep plugging away, don't you?
Exactly, and I would love to see it in Ireland, because Ireland, every year 650 odd kids are born with FASD, and there's a lot of shame around that, and there's a lot of people that don't actually know their children have got FASD and stuff like that. So for me in Ireland, even though we got our I'm not going to give anything more away about that, because I said it on the documentary.
Yes,
don't say anymore.
I have quite a good contact in Ireland at the moment, so you never know.
Oh, do you? Okay. Interesting, yeah. But thank you. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Happy.
And by the time this goes out, we will have announced you as one of our trainers with No Borders as well.
Yay!
That's going to happen tomorrow.
Cool.
In the real world, but this isn't going out until the 4th of September.
It's the time slip. Oh,
yeah. I know. But just to kind of cover that one off. So, in case you haven't seen on our website, noborderstraining.org, or on our socials.
I'm good.
I know, I'm very good. Jo and I hopefully are going to do some stuff on FASD together in training. So we're working on that at the minute. It's like we're all juggling loads of stuff, and we will get the time to do it. But you're on our website now. So if anybody wants to find out, I don't know if there is any more to find out about Jo, actually. Maybe this is a brilliant way.
I think there's a lot.
There's always loads. There's always loads that you don't want to know.
Google her. Go to the dark web.
I've got lots of questions.
I just want to say thank you for having me, and I'm really pleased to have met Al, because I've listened to you so much, and it's quite nice to sort of meet you. You've always made me really laugh, especially when you and Scott have some banter. That's cracked me up many times and kept my car journeys really entertaining.
Oh, bless your heart.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
So that was Jo Garofolo. And Jo, do you know what? It's funny because Jo is just like, she's so bouncy.
Do you know who she reminded me of?
Go on.
Daniela Shanley. I thought if those two people ever got in a room, if they got in a room, it would be like a cataclysm. It would be crazy.
They actually do get in a room quite often, because Jo does some stuff at Beach Lodge School.
Wow. I want to be a fly in the wall when those two have a conversation about anything. That would be wonderful. They'd be like fizzing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Bless her. But I mean, she is fascinating, because I mean, I met Jo through doing VIAM when I worked at Adoption UK. And the relationship grew, and I learned so much, because we all kind of live this life of adoption where we think, well, we go through the process and and similar to Daniela's experience actually from adopting from abroad.
Yes.
Some of the same hurdles, some of the same issues, some of the same legal problems. And, to kind of, and I'm not saying that anybody should be grateful for this, but, the fact that they actually did, literally move to another country so that they would be able to adopt a child like that, even if it was just temporary, but without the support, without anybody being able to be there for them and help them.
Just up and doing it.
Yeah. It's fascinating. It is fascinating. And it just shows some of the kind of intricacies of adoption in other countries when you think it may be quite simple. And I know that, their second experience was here in the UK, but to have gone through that and wow, just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I have problems with international adoption for those reasons, and I didn't particularly, it was appropriate to get into that, because that was not why we were having the interview. But I just find it fascinating, like you said, that you meet people, and she was one of those people who were just like, I will get to where I'm going. Nothing will stop me. But that then reflects into the voice in a million. Oh, I'm going to do this. I think we should do this, and there should be this. Then I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. And similarly with the FASD, the documentary. I think there should be a documentary.
Yeah, I'm going to do it. Exactly. I mean, force to be reckoned with, I would say. And, she's so passionate, and, it's just, like I don't like using the word inspiration, but she inspires me, if that makes sense. She inspires me to continue on just being able to kind of talk about this and all the kind of intricacies, all the, the little tangents that you and I go on to, and, all that sort of stuff. It's all relevant. It's all necessary. It all needs to still be talked about. And I think that someone like Jo really keeps the passion alive, because you don't just say, I'm going to do a documentary and then, kind of pander into it and go, I'm bored now. We're talking some really, in the FASD world, we're talking FASD in the UK world, we're talking some really kind of high hitters. We're talking about Raja Mukherjee. We're talking about Sandra Butcher. We're talking about people who are really kind of trying to drive forward. Well, I did take part. I'm not going to deny. I've not seen it. I've not seen the final cut, so I could literally be in the promo and that's it.
Did you have to go into makeup for it? Did you get makeup?
No, I didn't. I will let you know on a little secret. So I don't know if you've seen the promo, but the backdrop, that was actually a green screen.
Shut your mouth.
I know. And I was like, what? When I saw it, I was sat in front of a library and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't know I was that intelligent. But you don't just jump into a documentary thinking, right, I'm going to do that, and then just kind of give up halfway through and have those people take part. There's some really, some really personal experiences in there. And when I'm talking about personal experience, I'm not just talking about parents. I'm talking about people who have FASD who have taken part, and that's such a key part of what Jo has done with this. Is she's made sure that the stories that are being told are lived, not just from a parental perspective. And Raja Mukherjee's input, I have no doubt, will really have an impact when it comes to trying to get the awareness of how important it is for not to depend on I'm talking about in terms of being able to access assessments for FASD, and it's really difficult to get that unless it's noted in the children's history or the child's history that they were exposed to alcohol in the womb and stuff like that. It's really hard. So hopefully we can kind of start to build on that conversation with the documentary, which is, I think it's 9th of September. It's going to be available. I don't know where, I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's apparently.
We'll put links to all of that stuff in. But I think it's I think documentaries are a really good medium to do it. And I think it's the potential just to kind of condense that and give that into to take it into staff rooms, take it into social work teams, take it into a whole raft of different places to really develop. I'll probably show it to my foster carers, and it's a step off into more knowledge, but it's in some ways even just to say to people, this is a thing, this is real, this is bona fide, then that is, and if it achieves that, then people who need to go and find out more will be sort of pushed into doing that. And I'm sure there'll be much more to it than just awareness raising. There'll be probably more stuff to it than that, but we'll get to watch it. Maybe in the next podcast we could do a little review. We can
review it, except for my input. Let's not review that.
We could do one of those YouTube what are they called? Not review.
Yes.
Oh, what's it?
Hold on, I have to suffer them when we've got Wi-Fi, which we don't at the moment.
Oh,
Jacob watches
reaction.
all that sort of stuff. Yes,
we could do a reaction video to it. Oh, let's do it. Oh, please, please, for the podcast, we could do it on the YouTube channel, and we pause it and go, "Oh, I like this bit because this person." And then when it gets to your bit, we'll just awkwardly move on.
This is just cringe stuff, honestly. Cringe.
But do you see how many views people are getting? It's like it's not 10 or 15; it's hundreds of thousands of people. Someone watching someone else do something else. Wow.
Yeah, I know. And can I just remind you that our collective opinion on stuff like that is quite low.
Yeah.
I think on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Just saying, Talking of which,
you're right.
Actually, thanks, Jo. If you are listening, Jo, thank you so much for taking part. But I was just going to say, we're hoping for an Instagrammer, aren't we? Who I need to message because she's been on holiday. I'm not going to mention any names just yet, but
an adoption influencer.
Yes.
Can we call her that?
I'm not sure if she would appreciate being called that. But we have made contact and we have we've established contact with ground control.
There's life out there.
Yeah, but summer holidays and Wi-Fi issues have kind of blocked out. However, I think it'll be an interesting chat because, that was a very good segue, Coates. Well done, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because you just twigged my brain to think, we do want to do that, don't we?
I think saying what well done segue, then that kind of negates how good it was.
The segue. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, pretty sure it does.
I was just showing appreciation for you. That was all.
No. Off screen.
But anyway, yes, we're in the process of trying to sort out a date for that, because Al and I, well, if you've listened to previous podcasts, you'll know we're kind of a little bit, when it comes to the old Instagram and the kind of influencers and stuff like that. So
it's just jealousy.
Jealousy of what, though?
Oh, I don't know.
Because they get paid.
No, I know, free shampoo or whatever. Okay.
Well, interesting. Because we've been what's it again, haven't we? That's
like what Paula says to me. It's like oh, you know that thing we've done with it.
He says. We've been. What's that thing online where you get thingied? Trolled. That's it. Yeah. We've been trolled again, haven't we? Not on Twitter this time.
Facebook.
How rude.
Yeah.
By the same person who was trolling us on Twitter.
I'm not sure though. I mean, is it trolling? I don't think it's trolling. I don't know what the definition of trolling is. It's just someone who's got a different opinion to us and quite forthright in sharing that.
Forthright. That's a good way of putting it. That's not the word I would use, but yeah.
Yeah, it might have started because I laughed because they said one of our guests was a Satanist. That might have been the start point. And I took umbrage and said, "Oh, really? We've slipped into the world of QAnon and
No, don't.
Oh, I know. We're well into the long grass now. How did we get to QAnon? Yes. We've had manscaping. We've had QAnon.
Yeah, you went to QAnon.
Oh, that madness. It's really complicated, isn't it? Because I think that if you get into that mindset, then it's that bias of your mind, of that thinking that everything confirms those preconceived positions. And I'm sure Josh McAllister isn't a Satanist.
No, I'm sure.
I mean, I'm open to be proved wrong. I am, right? I've got an open mind on it. But from my experience of Satanists, I don't think he's one.
No. And I think that, anyway, whatever they look like, those Satanist people,
mind having that kid. Anyway, no. I am so in.
Let's not go any further with that one.
This is like naughty outtakes, isn't it? It's like podcast after hours. Wait, okay, before we go, we're in a couple of weeks, we're going to do a podcast called No Shizzle Sherlock, because we read the recent report that was kind of stating the bleeding obvious. And I sent it to you and went, oh, no, I thought was it you who went, No Shizzle Sherlock. And we said, we should.
Well, I didn't say shizzle, but yeah.
And we said we should do a podcast that's not only swearing is permitted, but it's actually about swearing, because I know a lot of our listeners' families and children and young people, how shall we say, are
flamboyant with the language.
Flamboyant with our language, embrace all of the English vernacular in all of its colourful.
It doesn't even have to be in English, to be fair.
No. They will making up new words, splitting up sweary words to put sweary words in between. And so we thought we would do an episode where we put an explicit rating on it, and we start at the beginning and we go right the way through. Lots of anecdotes. What is it, and how it impacts on this and stuff. So if people have got funny stories about swearing, please direct message them. They can be anonymous.
I would love to hear them, because I have so many. I'm sure you do as well. Swearing is, I mean, you sometimes drop a few little ones now and again, but not like purposely. It wouldn't be you to
Let's
swear.
Not do the episode now.
No, I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that I am a swearer generally.
You would make a pirate.
If we've got an explicit rating, then you can be guaranteed for a bit of fun. And probably Al's face being as red as the t-shirt that he's wearing right now.
No, I'm going to embrace the swearing, and I'm going to put a disclaimer at the beginning that this is not my normal position on the sweary word, but I will be quoting verbatim in the extreme. And I have I have sentences that would literally make a pirate blush.
Yeah, and it's a one-off. It is a one-off.
It is well, unless it's very, very popular.
Well, exactly. But if anybody's got any ideas, and we talked about this before we started recording, on how to use different words for different things, as well as, that would be interesting, especially the word SH1T, just because we're going to drop those in. So if you've got any, send them to us, and we will try and use as many as possible.
Yeah. To be honest, I think swearing's fantastically interesting. But anyway, I'm gonna
we'll cover that
all
in
of that
episode. Yeah,
I've got some examples. Anyway, so I'm gonna go because I'm still on my holidays, and I've got a new puppy who's I don't know whether you can see on the camera, bitten my nose.
I did see that. Oh, is that what that is? Oh,
the dog bit my nose. So there you go. Nose injury aside, I am going to go off and make sure that the youngest, who's now 10, hasn't been devoured by one of the
by a puppy.
By a puppy.
Yeah, fair enough.
Cool. Okay, and I shall speak to you soon.
You shall.
Bon Jovi.
Bon Jovi. Anchovy.
Do you know what I discovered today? This is podcast gold. I discovered that she knows how to trim beards. She was trained as a barber, so she know. How long have I had a beard?
Years.
Years, and she said to me,
and you discovered this today.
Right, I said, I might go to the barbers. Because I just had this urge to go to the barbers and do some what's it called?
Manscaping.
Not manscaping. I think that's something else. Look, if I go to a barber's and go, can you manscape this?
Wow, pull down your trousers.
How did you lose your social work license? Well. And so I said to her, I don't like it when it gets bushy at the bottom. And she went, well, you do know I can sort that out. She hates my beard. She said, I hate your beard. I'm like, I know, but I know if we have to have either or, then it's with the beard. And she went, well, I can sort that out. So I've been married to her for 25 years next month. And I've just found out now she knows how to trim beards. 25 years. That's how you keep the magic, isn't it? That's how you keep the little spice. So keeps it alive.
Keep the surprises in store.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we crack on?
Yeah, you better crack on.
Yeah, okay.
Just visions of me naively going and asking a Turkish barber, would you be able to manscape me?
And him looking at you like, well,
short shrift.
Charge you extra for that.
Yeah. This might hurt a bit.
Yeah. The wax strips come out.
Yeah. In front of Anyway.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah. Right. Hello and welcome to this special episode of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast with me, Scott Casson Rennie, and Manscaped.
Al Coates, and I'm not Manscaped. You'll have to listen to the podcast extras for that. I've put something at the very end. Very, very end. And I'm not Manscaped. I will never be Manscaped.
No, you're a big gruff northerner, aren't you?